I'm Dr. J. Calvin McKinney. We're continuing our study on church history. Last week we're talking about the Emperor Constantine and the Council of Nicaea, the first worldwide general council, except there was only 10 people from the west and 290 people from the east. So it wasn't actually very representative of anything at that point. A lot of changes happened because of Emperor Constantine. If you could imagine a billionaire joining a little church somewhere, well, let's say like this church. If a billionaire joined this church, he would immediately whisper in the pastor's ear, let's go ahead and build a new building. You know, I'll give the first 200,000. And well, I don't know. Well, okay, I'll give 300,000. And let's do something. Let's build something beautiful. Let's make something pretty. Let's hire some staff. Because people with money are used to throwing their weight around. So when the Emperor Constantine adopted Christianity, it had been illegal. They had all these problems. They confiscated properties. They tortured Christians. And so now they make everything legal, but not just that, he goes way beyond that. You see, in Emperor Constantine's mind, he was the head of the church, because one of the titles of the Emperor of Rome was Pontifex Maximus. He was the supreme pontiff, the big papa over all religions in the realm, in the domain. And so he viewed, when he adopted Christianity, he just normally assumed the posture of the guy in charge of the whole shooting match. So when they argued about some theological matters at the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, he simply settled the issue. We're going to go, and he said, we're going to go with the Athanasius position versus the Arius position. And Arian position said Jesus was created and that he could have sinned. The Athanasius position said he was fully God and fully man and couldn't have sinned, etc. So the emperor sided with the minority because for whatever his political reasons, he thought that was the best way to go, and probably 2/3 of the bishops there were more on this side of the Arianism. But it wasn't enough that he adopted that position. They hired 340 scribes to copy the Bible as they understood the New Testament to be and to pass them out in the churches. And further, he went on to, in all the bigger cities, like Carthage and Alexandria and Rome and Constantinople, he built huge basilicas, great, Roman columns in the front and the rounded arches, and they built huge buildings as they would for a major government building for the world empire. They built these buildings for all the bishops in the big cities. And they went on to put all those bishops on a big, fat, elaborate salary, and to grant to the church huge portions of land, in and out of town. And so in reality, all these bishops went from being nobody. You got a guy here with his little Bible study, and they're baptizing other people every now and then. And, he didn't view himself as anything a whole lot other than I'm serving Christ and I'm doing the best I can, and we have a group of people and some home Bible studies and everything's going good. And suddenly he's the biggest businessman in town. He's living like a king. He's got, gold emblems on his chariots and stuff. And he owns all this property, and he's got to hire servants to work it for him. And so these bishops obviously had problems emotionally. If you give 100 people a large sum of money that aren't used to having any, probably 75 or 80 out of the 100 will crash and burn their entire life because They weren't mentally, emotionally prepared. They weren't used to handling millions of dollars. If you look at the people that win the, what are those, the lotto and stuff, they win all those millions. Most of those people, their lives are ruined. But look at them 5 years from now, they're bankrupt. They owe the IRS, they owe all kinds of stuff. They charge stuff they can't pay for. They bought a big house, they're losing the house, they're losing all their friends. Their life is torn to shreds. So what happens if you're a bishop and say you're the bishop of Rome, and he gives you all this land, the land that St. Peter's Basilica was built on, and incidentally Constantine was there to officiate at the dedication of the building of the old St. Peter's. You know, during the Reformation times they rebuilt it and enlarged it and made it even more grand. So here you are, you go from being a you know, normal person, except you love God and you dedicate yourself to prayer and trying to help people and preaching the gospel of Christ. And now you're a tycoon. You got a big estate and you bought you some Arabian stallions and you hire a lot of slaves. And the next thing you know, a ton of corruption was coming into the church. And I'm not going to get ahead of myself, but for those of you who don't know, and I did find this in 2 different historical accounts, when Martin Luther, what really got him upset and got him thinking is he was a priest and he went to Rome and the Pope and the cardinals were all being waited on by 13 naked young girls. And he said, you know what? There's something wrong with this picture. We've gone from this, you know, humble, godly bishop here, and he's got his people, and they're all, you know, working and struggling and getting along, to all of a sudden it's wealth and fabulous money and control and all that stuff. The problem with that is the same person who gave you the money and supplies it every month can take it away. I knew a movie star guy once, was a friend of ours, and his brother was a pastor and had a church no larger than his church, but he drove a brand new Cadillac and had diamonds, and he just looked like a movie star because his movie star brother was sending money to him and supporting him. So when the brother died and the money's cut off, well then you go, ah! You have a panic. You know, it's a major catastrophe of some sort. So we have this problem. You'd already had the development from the apostolic days to Constantine. They'd already developed into more of, you know, the countrified person, didn't know much of the scripture, and he's out in the country and they're all just praying and laying hands on one another and having a good time. And in the city then they're getting more refined and more wealthy people are coming and they're meeting in homes, but they would be bigger homes, nicer stuff, better reputation in the community. You had this dichotomy among the ministers, and now when the emperor himself decides that he's in charge of Christianity, and not he might be or he might have a little influence, he's in charge, because he sent out the word. Now 2/3 of the people who could have come to Nicaea to do business at this council, 2/3 of them didn't come, even though he sent all expenses paid invitations. 2/3 of them still didn't come. They didn't want anything to do with it. And so now it's even worse. You have the country bishops and then the city guys who are doing better, have more education, they have some scripture, they have some some experience, some education, some background. And now you have these super bishops or archbishops, and arche, A-R-C-H-E, with the long E, arche, archbishops, or simply guys, arch simply means first. That's all it means. It's a Greek word. Archi means first. First in order or rank. And so now you've got archbishops whom they begin to call patriarchs. So religion begins to be more and more divided. And if that division's not enough, we told you before that one of the emperors split the kingdom, and he took the eastern half, which was where all the money was going, it was really thriving, and gave to one of his buddies the western half. And so there's division politically, there's division among the bishops, and there's even more division because some of them would obey whatever Constantine or whoever the emperor was. I mean, he simply made his little decrees. He sent them a letter, here's what you're going to do. Well, if you didn't do what he said to do, they would cut your water off, so to speak. They'd cut your, you know, if you have a disagreement with the city you live in, I can already tell you what they'll do if you don't cooperate. Anybody know what they do? They shut off your electricity and water.
Yeah.
And they say, when you want to cooperate, call me. So once they accepted the emperor as the guy in charge of the church, and in charge of these big archbishop guys that we later called patriarchs, once you accept that, then a whole world of other issues comes in. You're getting your monthly stipend, and you don't get it if you're not cooperating, right?
Right.
So, unfortunately, there are a lot of people these days that try and control their children that way. When they get older, the kids are struggling along, trying to work and figure out how to buy a house and all, and they hold that money out and have the kids jumping and hopping, and you're going to do what I said, or I won't let you have the money for the new car, you know. And they control